Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to crack open Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. We're not just going to summarize it or anything. We're doing for the aha moments, the kind that make you see yourself in the world maybe a little differently.
It's pretty amazing how Peterson kind of weaves together psychology and philosophy and even ancient myths. He's giving us this, I don't know, like a mental toolkit for navigating being human and all the ups and downs that come with that.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the first things that grabbed me was his whole take on order and chaos. He's saying they're like these fundamental forces shaping our lives, right?
Yeah.
We crave order, routine, knowing what to expect.
Right.
But then chaos just bursts in.
Of course.
And it's not always a bad thing, right?
Exactly. He uses that classic story, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, to kind of illustrate this whole idea. So you've got Adam and Eve living in blissful ignorance. That's order, right? But it's also vulnerability. Like, they're right for the taking.
So you're saying their fall from grace, getting kicked out of the garden, that's actually them stepping into self-awareness, even though it means pain and having to make tough choices.
I think so, yeah. Think about it. Have you ever had something happen that just completely shook up your world? A job loss or a really bad breakup? Something that just felt like chaos at the time. But then, looking back, did it force you to grow in ways you wouldn't have otherwise?
Oh, that's a good point. So Peterson seems to be saying that chaos, while scary, is often like the catalyst for real change and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of unlikely sources of wisdom, he brings up lobsters.
Right. Who knew? But his point is fascinating. Lobsters, to explain, get this, the role of serotonin in social hierarchies. It's present in both lobsters and humans. Now, when a dominant lobster loses a fight, its brain chemistry actually changes, reflecting its new, lower status.
So he's suggesting that the feeling of winning or losing isn't just in our heads. There's a biological basis for it.
Yeah, and it's not about saying hierarchies are good or bad, just that they're deeply rooted in us. Think about it. Have you ever experienced a major setback in your career or personal life, something that made you question your place in the world?
It's almost like that feeling of having to rebuild yourself from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Peterson doesn't stop at lobsters and hierarchies. He tackles something that I think we've all pondered at some point. Why do some people seem like wildly successful while others struggle? He brings in something called Price's Law to explain this.
Price's Law basically describes this uneven distribution of success, whether it's wealth, scientific breakthroughs, even Instagram followers, right?
Sure.
A small percentage of people end up having a huge impact.
So is he saying we should just accept this as some law of nature and not even try to change things?
No, it's not about resigning yourself to fate or anything. Peterson's point is more about how we define success. Are we playing too many games in life where we're bound to be average instead of focusing on the ones where we can truly excel?
That's actually really liberating. Instead of comparing ourselves constantly, maybe we should be asking, what are my strengths? What are the games where I can genuinely contribute and find meaning?
Exactly. And that ties into another one of his big themes, truth-telling. He's not just talking about avoiding lying, but about being honest with ourselves, about who we are, what we want, what we're capable of.
Yeah, and he has this really powerful story about a patient who is deeply paranoid, but also, brutally honest.
Right.
Peterson realized that to build trust meant meeting that honesty with his own, even if it meant challenging the patient's beliefs.
It makes you wonder, how often do we avoid difficult truths, even in our own lives? Could facing those truths head-on, both with ourselves and with other people, be the key to building stronger relationships and living a more authentic life?
That's a question worth pondering. And Peterson doesn't stop at truth in our personal lives. He links it to the very fabric of society. He makes it pretty clear that widespread lying, deceit, manipulations, that's a recipe for chaos and breakdown.
Which brings us to another key idea, discipline. A life of meaning and purpose doesn't just happen, it's built brick by brick, through choices, habits, and yes, even sacrifices.
Yeah, and he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, does he? He uses the example of Christ's sacrifice, not in a preachy way at all, but as this archetype of giving yourself over to something bigger, something beyond immediate pleasure.
It's a challenge to think about. What are we willing to sacrifice for something we truly believe in? What discomfort are we willing to endure for a greater good? Those are tough questions, but ones that Peterson forces us to confront.
Absolutely. And speaking of tough questions, he dives right into parenting. He acknowledges the complexities, but firmly advocates for clear rules and boundaries.
Yeah, what I find interesting is how he balances this with personal anecdotes. He's honest about his own struggles raising his kids, making it clear that there's no perfect parent playbook. But he does believe discipline done right is a form of love. It's about preparing kids for the real world, which isn't always sunshine and rainbows.
Right? He even tells a story about a little kid on the playground who intentionally stepped on his daughter's hand, just out of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
His response, while controversial to some, highlights that sometimes parents have to step in and enforce boundaries, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see that.
It gets at this deeper question: are we raising kids who are resilient, who understand actions have consequences, who can navigate the complexities of the world?
It all ties back to his ideas about order and chaos, right? Parenting is about creating a sense of order and security for your kids, but also giving them the space to explore, make mistakes, and ultimately grow into their own people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, and Peterson's insights offer a valuable framework for navigating that challenge. But I think what's truly powerful is how he connects these ideas to our own inner lives.
You mean his emphasis on personal responsibility? He's pretty adamant that we stop blaming others for our problems and take a hard look in the mirror.
Exactly. He even goes so far as to say we should stop complaining. Well, not entirely, but he makes a distinction between complaining and speaking the truth. Complaining keeps you stuck, but speaking truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is about identifying problems so you can address them.
That makes sense.
He tells this story about a client who was convinced, that everyone was out to get her. Peterson helped her realize that focusing on those perceived injustices was actually preventing her from taking control of her own life.
Wow.
It makes you think, right? Are there areas in your own life where you're playing the victim? Are you blaming external circumstances instead of taking ownership of your choices and actions?
It's easy to fall into that trap.
It is. But Peterson's message is empowering. He's saying we have the power to choose our responses, to make changes, and to create a better life for ourselves.
That's a good point.
And that's where his idea of standing up straight comes in, both literally and metaphorically. He argues that our physical posture actually influences our mental state. Flarging conveys defeat, but standing tall, shoulders back, projects confidence. It even changes how others perceive us.
Interesting.
So, by making small changes in our outward behavior, we can actually start to feel more confident and capable on the inside. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. But it does take discipline, which brings us back to that core theme. It's about building good habits, setting routines, and delaying gratification to achieve those long-term goals.
Right. He even talks about his own struggles with depression and how he had to force himself to get out of bed, go for walks, engage with the world, even when he felt like doing absolutely nothing.
It must have been hard.
And it was through those small acts of discipline that he was able to pull himself out of that dark place. He even quotes Nietzsche, who said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how."
Powerful stuff.
So it's about finding that why, that sense of meaning and purpose that fuels us even when things get tough.
I like that.
And speaking of tough, Peterson is all about facing our fears, stepping outside our comfort zones, embracing the unknown. He uses this great analogy of exploring a new territory. If we stay huddled in our safe little camp, we never discover the hidden treasures that might be out there.
Makes sense.
But to find those treasures, you got to be willing to face some dangers.
Absolutely. It's through those challenges that we grow stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more fulfilled. It's like that classic hero's journey. You leave the familiar, face trials, and return transformed.
Oh, I love that analogy. But it's not just about individual growth. Peterson also talks about the importance of contributing to something larger than ourselves, of finding meaning in serving others.
He sees this as essential for both individual and societal well-being. When we only focus on ourselves, we become isolated and unhappy. But when we contribute to something bigger, whether it's our family, community, or even humanity as a whole, we tap into a deeper sense of purpose.
He even brings back the idea of sacrifice, not literally, but in the sense of giving up something in the present for a greater good in the future.
Right.
It's about making choices that are tough in the short term, but lead to a better outcome for ourselves and others. Think about your own life. Are there areas where you could make a sacrifice, big or small, to contribute to something you believe in?
That's a great question to think about, and it all circles back to his core idea, right? Truth-telling, personal responsibility, taking action. He even uses that example of cleaning your room, not just as a metaphor for getting your life in order, but as a concrete step towards taking ownership of your space.
Right. It's about recognizing that even small acts of order and discipline can have a ripple effect, creating a sense of peace and harmony.
I like that.
And that sense of order, of meaning, it's not something that just appears, is it? It's something we actively create through our choices and actions.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we have the power to choose our path, to face our fears, to overcome obstacles, and ultimately create a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling.
So well said. He talks about the importance of setting goals, breaking down big tasks into smaller steps, being patient and persistent in pursuing what matters most.
Right. It's about realizing that life is a journey, not a destination. And the real reward is in the striving, the growing, the becoming the best version of ourselves.
That's where Peterson gets really deep, talking about good and evil, and the importance of aligning ourselves with good, even when it's really hard. He uses that story of Cain and Abel, the first murder in the Bible, to illustrate this whole concept.
Oh, right. Cain, driven by jealousy, kills his brother Abel, who represents innocence. It's such a powerful story about the darkness that exists within each of us, capable of both incredible love and terrible violence.
So, is Peterson challenging us to confront that darkness? To acknowledge our own capacity for evil, and to choose the path of righteousness instead?
And he's not talking about blind faith or religious dogma. It's about making a conscious choice to align yourself with what is good, true, and beautiful, even when it's difficult. He's saying we have a responsibility to make things better, to fight against injustice, to create a more humane world.
That responsibility, it all starts with each of us, right? Taking ownership of our own lives, speaking the truth, acting with integrity, and choosing to move towards the good, even in small ways.
Absolutely. It's recognizing that we're not just passive observers, we're active participants in shaping our destiny. The choices we make, big or small, have the power to make a difference.
This is where I find Peterson so inspiring. He talks about the potential for human greatness, for transcending our limitations and achieving something extraordinary.
He believes this potential is within each of us, waiting to be awakened. But to awaken it, we have to face our fears, just beyond our comfort zones, and embrace the challenges that life throws our way.
So it's about finding our purpose, developing our talents, contributing to the world in a way that feels authentic and fulfilling.
He even uses the analogy of an artist struggling to bring forth beauty from a blank canvas. It's that creative impulse, that desire to create something new and lasting, that drives us to push beyond our limitations and achieve something truly remarkable.
He talks about finding work that's both challenging and rewarding, pursuing excellence in everything we do, leaving a legacy we can be proud of. It's not about just consuming and being entertained, but about creating, building, making the world a better place.
Exactly. And that leads us to another fundamental aspect of a meaningful life, love and relationships. Peterson argues that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, a commitment, an act of will.
It's about choosing to see the best in another person, supporting their growth, being there for them through thick and thin.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we're not meant to go through life alone, but to find companionship, intimacy, and love in the company of another.
He even uses his own marriage as an example, talking about the challenges and rewards of building a life together, raising kids, supporting each other through the ups and downs.
It's a good reminder that love isn't always easy. It takes work, compromise, and a willingness to put the needs of another before our own. But the rewards of a loving, supportive relationship are immeasurable.
Oh, absolutely. He gets really personal here, talking about his own struggles with finding love, overcoming heartbreak, learning to be a better husband and father.
It's reassuring to hear because even the most successful people face these challenges. We all have our own journeys to navigate when it comes to love and relationships.
For sure. And he talks about the importance of forgiveness, both of ourselves and others, of letting go of past hurts and choosing to move forward with love and compassion.
It's about recognizing that we're all imperfect, that we all make mistakes. Holding on to anger and bitterness only hurts us in the end.
That forgiveness and compassion, it's not just about romantic relationships, right? It extends to our families, friends, communities, even to those we perceive as enemies.
Precisely. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, choosing to respond to the world with kindness and understanding, even when it's really difficult.
Yeah. And this is where Peterson's ideas about order and chaos come back in. He sees love and forgiveness as forces of order, as antidotes to the chaos of hatred, violence, and division.
Right. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in every moment to contribute to either creation or destruction. And the path of love, while challenging, ultimately leads to a more just, peaceful, and fulfilling life for everyone.
He even gets a bit spiritual here, talking about the transcendent power of love, about experiencing a connection to something greater than ourselves, whether it's God, nature, or the collective consciousness of humanity.
He believes this connection isn't forced, but arises naturally when we open our hearts to love, beauty, truth, and the mystery of existence.
So it's about cultivating gratitude, appreciating the good things in our lives, finding joy in the simple pleasures of everyday existence.
Exactly. It's recognizing that life is a gift, that even amidst suffering and hardship, there's always something to be thankful for. And by focusing on the good, by cultivating gratitude, by acting with love and compassion, we're not only creating a better world, but we're also tapping into a deeper source of meaning and fulfillment that transcends our individual ego.
Wow, that's powerful. It reminds us that we have the power to choose our own path, to create meaning and purpose, and to leave the world a better place than we found it.
It's a message that resonates deeply no matter what your background or beliefs. It calls us to be more, to live a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling, and to contribute to a world that is more just, compassionate, and beautiful.
Well, what a whirlwind tour through some of Peterson's key ideas. We've covered a lot of ground, but we're just getting started.
In part two, we'll dive even deeper, exploring his more nuanced and sometimes controversial views on topics like gender roles, religion, and the nature of truth. Get ready, because it's about to get even more interesting.
So buckle up, listeners, and join us for the next part of our deep dive into 12 Rules for Life.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Last time we kind of explored some of Peterson's core ideas, about order and chaos, truth-telling and taking responsibility for your life and all that. But Peterson, he doesn't shy away from tackling controversial topics, does he?
No, not at all. He really dives headfirst into some hot-button issues, the kind that spark a lot of debate. So let's unpack some of those maybe more nuanced and often controversial aspects of his work.
One of the areas where Peterson has generated maybe the most discussion and, sometimes criticism is his perspective on gender roles. Some people have accused him of reinforcing traditional gender stereotypes, but I think his view is much more nuanced than that.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. What exactly is Peterson's stance on gender roles, and why has it caused such a stir?
Peterson's whole approach to gender is rooted in his understanding of evolutionary psychology and biology. He argues that men and women, while equal in dignity and worth, have evolved, different psychological and behavioral tendencies, over thousands of years.
He uses that lobster example again, right? Pointing out that male lobsters are naturally more aggressive and competitive, driven by their biology to fight for dominance and all that.
He does, and while he acknowledges that human behavior is obviously far more complex than, that of lobsters, he suggests that these underlying biological differences have played a role in shaping the traditional roles of men and women in society.
So is he saying that these roles are set in stone, or that women should be confined to the home and men to the workplace? Because that's definitely not the message I'm getting from his work.
No, you're right. He's not saying that at all. Peterson's very careful to avoid making prescriptive statements about how men and women should behave. He's more interested in understanding the underlying factors that have kind of influenced gender roles throughout history and how those factors continue to shape our experiences today.
He also emphasizes the importance of both masculinity and femininity, like in a balanced society, right?
Absolutely. He sees both masculine and feminine traits as valuable and necessary, arguing that a healthy society needs a balance of both. Think of the yin and yang symbol, those opposing forces of masculine and feminine energy intertwined and interdependent.
That's a great way to visualize it. So how do these ideas about gender play out in his 12 rules for life? Are there specific rules where this comes through?
Definitely. One example is his rule, stand up straight with your shoulders back. He's not just talking about physical posture here. He's talking about embodying a sense of confidence and assertiveness, which he sees as essential for both men and women.
He even suggests that improving your posture can actually boost your confidence and make you feel more capable. It's like faking it till you make it, but on a physical level.
Right. It's that mind-body connection again. He's acknowledging that our physical state can have a powerful influence on our mental and emotional state.
Makes sense. And he also talks about the importance of taking responsibility for your own life, setting goals, pursuing your passions, regardless of whether those passions are traditionally seen as masculine or feminine.
Exactly. He encourages both men and women to strive for excellence in all areas of their lives, to develop their unique talents, and to contribute to the world in a way that feels, meaningful and authentic to them.
But he also recognizes the unique challenges that women face in a society that doesn't always value feminine qualities, right? He's not blind to the inequalities that still exist.
Absolutely. He talks about the pressures women face, to conform to unrealistic beauty standards, to prioritize career over family, and to suppress their natural instincts towards nurturing and caregiving.
He even critiques what he calls the radical feminist ideology, arguing that it's not only misguided but potentially harmful, because it ignores the biological and psychological realities of gender.
He believes that a more balanced approach is needed, one that recognizes and values both masculine and feminine qualities and allows individuals to pursue their own unique paths, regardless of traditional gender stereotypes.
It's about finding that sweet spot where we acknowledge the differences between men and women without using those differences to limit anyone's potential or enforce rigid social norms.
Exactly. Now, let's maybe move on to another topic that Peterson doesn't shy away from, religion. He's been called everything from a prophet to a charlatan for his views on faith and spirituality.
He's definitely a polarizing figure when it comes to religion. So where does he actually stand on this? Does he consider himself a religious person?
Well, that's what makes Peterson so fascinating. While he's clearly deeply interested in religious mythology and symbolism, he doesn't identify as like a traditional believer. He doesn't adhere to any, specific religious doctrine or dogma.
But he talks about the Bible and other religious texts as being incredibly valuable. He even calls the Bible the foundational document of Western civilization, right?
Yeah, and he sees these texts as offering like timeless wisdom about human nature, the human condition. He believes that the stories and teachings found in these texts, even those written thousands of years ago, provide like profound insights into the nature of good and evil, the challenges we all face in life, and our search for meaning.
So he's not necessarily saying we should take these stories literally. It's more about the deeper meaning and symbolism behind them.
Precisely. Peterson's approach to religion is, I'd say, more psychological and metaphorical than, theological. He's interested in what these stories reveal about, like, the human psyche and our shared experiences.
Like that Garden of Eden story, for example. He doesn't interpret it as a literal account of creation, but as like a symbolic representation of human nature and our fall from innocence.
Right. Adam and Eve's expulsion from the garden represents our awakening to self-consciousness, the burden of choice and the inevitable suffering that comes with knowledge and awareness.
He also talks a lot about the concept of sacrifice, which is like a central theme in many religious traditions.
He sees sacrifice not in a literal sense, like blood offerings or anything, but as a willingness to give up something of value in the present for the sake of something greater in the future.
He even uses the example of Christ's sacrifice, not necessarily endorsing the theological doctrine surrounding it, but as an archetype of selflessness, that potential for love and compassion that exists within us all.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that true meaning and fulfillment often come from transcending our own, like, selfish desires and contributing to something larger than ourselves.
So even though Peterson doesn't identify as a religious person, in the traditional sense, he sees religion as a valuable source of wisdom and guidance.
Yes, he believes that religious teachings, when interpreted metaphorically and psychologically, can offer profound insights into the human experience. And they can, I think, provide a framework for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
It's like he's saying we don't have to subscribe to a particular religion or belief system to find value and wisdom in these ancient stories and teachings.
Exactly. Now, one last area I'd like to maybe explore is Peterson's perspective on truth. He's been criticized for his, well, somewhat unconventional views on what constitutes truth, especially in our postmodern world where everything seems to be up for debate.
Yeah, it feels like we're living in a time where truth is increasingly subjective and relative. People have very different ideas about what's true and what's not. So how does Peterson approach this complex issue?
Peterson challenges the idea that truth is simply, a matter of subjective opinion or social construction. He argues that there are objective truths about the world, truths that are grounded in reality. And those truths can be discovered through, observation, reason, and scientific inquiry.
But he also acknowledges that our understanding of truth is always evolving, right? What we believe to be true today might be proven false tomorrow. It seems like he's advocating for a balance between, holding on to our beliefs, but also being open to new information that might challenge those beliefs.
You've hit the nail on the head. Peterson's not like a dogmatist who clings rigidly to his beliefs. He's a pragmatist who believes we should hold our beliefs lightly, be open to new information, and be willing to revise our understanding of the world as we learn and grow.
He's also cautioning against that kind of radical skepticism that dismisses all claims to truth as mere power plays or social constructs. I think he sees that kind of nihilistic thinking as pretty dangerous.
Exactly. He argues that this kind of extreme skepticism is not only intellectually lazy, but can also undermine the very foundations of, a functioning society.
Because a society can't function if there's no shared understanding of reality. or if we don't believe that truth and justice are worth striving for.
Precisely. So while Peterson doesn't advocate for blind faith or unquestioning obedience to authority, he believes it's crucial to ground our beliefs in something solid, something that can withstand the test of time and, the scrutiny of reason.
He even uses that analogy of a map, arguing that while no map can perfectly represent the complexity of the territory, a good map can still guide us toward our destination and help us avoid danger.
It's such a brilliant analogy. He's essentially saying that a good set of beliefs, grounded in truth and reason, can help us navigate the complexities of life and lead us toward a more fulfilling and meaningful existence.
So it's not about claiming to have all the answers or clinking to rigid dogma, but about being on a continuous journey of seeking truth and being open to revising our understanding of the world as we learn and grow.
Yes, and that's what makes Peterson's perspective so refreshing and thought-provoking. He's encouraging us to engage in that ongoing process of seeking truth, recognizing that it's a journey, not a destination.
That's a great note to end on. We've explored some of Peterson's more maybe complex and challenging ideas about gender roles, religion, and the nature of truth. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into 12 Rules for Life. We've covered a lot of ground so far, exploring Peterson's ideas on everything from order and chaos to lobsters and religion. And
Yeah.
I think to really grasp the impact of his work, we need to understand the man behind the message a little bit.
It's true. His personal journey is very much intertwined with his intellectual and philosophical work. He's remarkably open about his own struggles with depression and anxiety and, that universal search for meaning that we all kind of go through. And it adds, I think, this layer of authenticity to his writing and his teaching.
Yeah, he even shared some pretty personal stories in the book, about his experiences with childhood bullying, working in the oil fields of Alberta, and his observations of small-town life in Canada. It's really interesting.
Those experiences, I think, clearly shaped his worldview, giving him this kind of unique perspective on the human condition, the complexities of life and that yearning for meaning that I think we all feel on some level.
There's that story about his childhood friend Chris, who battled addiction and ended up in a pretty dark place. It seems to have had a profound impact on Peterson, making him acutely aware of life's fragility and the dangers of, I don't know, giving in to despair.
It makes you wonder how those personal encounters shape a person's, intellectual path. In Peterson's case, it seems to have fueled his determination to kind of find answers, to help people navigate those dark places and find a way back to meaning.
He also talked about his own political activism, like in his younger years, and his disillusionment with both the left and the right.
That's interesting because you can see how that disillusionment kind of led him to develop his own unique worldview, drawing on a tapestry of sources from philosophy and psychology to religion and mythology. It's this blend of ideas that makes him so captivating.
Yeah, it's like he's not afraid to step outside those traditional ideological boxes and kind of create his own framework for understanding the world.
Exactly, and he doesn't shy away from those difficult questions or from challenging conventional wisdom. It's refreshing in a world where people often seem, I don't know, afraid to think for themselves.
He also talks about his time as a clinical psychologist working with patients facing all sorts of challenges like addiction, trauma, depression, anxiety. It seems like those experiences gave him this deep well of empathy and understanding of, I don't know, the human psyche.
Yeah, it's clear he's not just theorizing from an ivory tower or anything, but drawing on real life experiences, working with people who are grappling with some of life's toughest battles.
He emphasizes the importance of truly listening to his patients, trying to understand their perspectives, and helping them find ways to cope, to heal, and to kind of create a more meaningful life for themselves.
That compassion combined with his intellectual rigor and willingness to tackle those, big, often uncomfortable questions is what makes him such a compelling figure, I think.
Yeah, he's not just offering abstract theories or anything but practical tools and insights for navigating the challenges of being human. And he's doing it in a way that feels accessible and relatable, even when he's talking about complex ideas.
It's no wonder his message resonates with so many people, especially in our current cultural climate. Anxiety, uncertainty, a sense of meaninglessness. These are things so many people are struggling with today.
And he kind of offers a way out of that darkness, right? A path towards a more fulfilling life grounded in personal responsibility, truth-telling, and a commitment to leaving the world a little better than we found it.
It's a message of hope and empowerment that transcends political divides and speaks to something, deep within us.
So why do you think he's become such a phenomenon? What are some of the key factors that have contributed to his popularity?
It's a fascinating question. I think his timing is part of it. He came along at a time when Many people, particularly young men, were feeling lost and adrift, seeking meaning and direction in their lives.
And he provides like a clear, concise message that resonates with those who are, I don't know, hungry for meaning and purpose, but don't necessarily find it in traditional institutions or ideologies.
And his message isn't just about finding meaning, it's about taking action. It's about stepping up and taking responsibility for your life.
Right. He offers practical advice on how to improve your life, how to overcome challenges, how to build better habits, and how to find the courage to pursue your goals.
And his use of storytelling and mythology is brilliant. He can take these ancient stories and make them relevant to our modern lives, drawing on the wisdom of the past to kind of illuminate the present.
And let's be honest, his charisma is a factor too, right? He's a captivating speaker and storyteller, able to connect with people on an emotional level and inspire them to action.
You can feel his passion and conviction when he speaks. He truly believes in what he's saying, and that authenticity shines through.
He's also not afraid to challenge the status quo, to speak his mind, and to stand up for what he believes in, even when it's unpopular.
Yeah, he's definitely a lightning rod for controversy, but I think that's part of what draws people to him. He's not afraid to be politically incorrect, to challenge conventional wisdom, and to kind of shake things up a bit.
And it's important to note that his work has its share of critics. Some accuse him of being too conservative, too traditional, even of promoting, like, a patriarchal worldview.
It's true, his views on gender roles, religion, and social hierarchy have been particularly controversial, but even his most ardent critics would acknowledge that he's a serious thinker who grapples with big issues and challenges us to examine our own beliefs.
Yeah, I think that's what makes his work so valuable. It's not about agreeing with everything he says, but about engaging with his ideas, wrestling with those big questions, and kind of finding our own path towards a more meaningful life.
He's given us a framework for thinking critically about the world, for taking responsibility for our lives, and for striving to make a positive impact.
And that's a powerful legacy. So as we wrap up this deep dive into 12 rules for life, I want to leave you with a final thought. Peterson asks a profound question in his book. He says, if you had to write down the words you want inscribed on your soul, what would they be?
That's a good one.
It's a question that forces us to confront our value, our purpose, our aspirations.
What words would you choose?
Right. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? These are questions worth pondering, I think.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the, I don't know, complex and thought-provoking world of Jordan Peterson. We hope this exploration has provided you with some, valuable insights and sparked some interesting conversations.
And remember, keep those minds curious and those hearts open. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.